who his real parents were, and despite being reunited with his biological mother in 2003, Nick Endacott still didn't know who his father was.
Well, until 2 weeks ago, when a home DNA test revealed that he shared the same genes as Maurice Gibb, who we know as one-third of the legendary group, the Bee Gees. An incredible story. Nick is here now. This is a hell of a tale.
Everyone knew Maurice Gibb, the voice, the harmony, the heart of the Bee Gees. But not even he knew the truth, that somewhere out there was a boy carrying his blood. A boy who looked like him, moved like him, even made music like him, but wasn't raised in the spotlight. He grew up in East Sussex, adopted, disconnected from the glamour, the tours, the stardom. No last name, no inheritance, no contact, just questions. And a face in the mirror that never quite made sense. For over 50 years, this man walked through life not knowing who he really was. Until one day in 2019, he took a DNA test, just out of curiosity. What it revealed didn't just change his life. It cracked open one of the deepest secrets in Bee Gees history. Because the test didn't lie. And when the results came back, the name on the match was undeniable. Adam Gibb, Maurice's known son. The media exploded, the family was divided, and Nick Endacott was left wondering, had Maurice ever known? Or was this a truth buried so deep even the Bee Gees couldn't harmonize their way around it? Stay with us, because what happened next left even his closest relatives stunned. And some still aren't ready to talk about it. If you want the stories the headlines miss and the emotions they never show, subscribe to RetroWaves now, because this is where music meets mystery. Nick Endacott wasn't born into fame. He was born into silence. It was April 1968, and while the Bee Gees were just breaking into international superstardom, a quiet adoption was finalized in East Sussex, England. A baby boy was placed in a new home, no cameras, no interviews, just paperwork and closed doors. His new parents loved him, raised him, but there were always gaps. Things didn't quite add up. His appearance, his instincts, his overwhelming draw toward music, even before he knew how to play a note. He had no idea that at the same time he was learning to walk, Maurice Gibb was touring the world, carving his place in music history with words, "I've got to get a message to you," and Massachusetts. Nick grew up like any other kid except for the dreams. Dreams about being on stage, about being someone else, about being a Gibb. He didn't have the name, but he had the pull. Years passed, then decades. Nick started a band, got into production, but he still didn't know who he really was, and when he turned 50, he gave in to the curiosity that had haunted him for decades. He ordered a DNA test, not to uncover fame, just to understand. But what came back wasn't clarity. It was a name that changed everything, Adam Gibb, Maurice's son. The test showed a 100% paternal match. Nick had never even met Adam, but science didn't lie. So how was it possible? And if Maurice had another son, why did no one know? Was it a secret Maurice himself took to the grave, or was there someone else who knew the truth and buried it? We're just getting started. For most of his life, Nick Endacott didn't know who his biological parents were. He was adopted shortly after birth in East Sussex, England, in April 1968. His adoptive parents gave him a loving home, but as he grew older, the questions began to gnaw at him. There was no documentation, no photos, just silence. What struck Nick the most was his musical instinct. He had an uncanny ear, a rhythm that came naturally. He formed a band, The Speak, and spent his adult life writing and producing music. Still, there was something missing, something he couldn't quite name. Then came the mirror. As the Bee Gees rose to legendary status, Nick saw photos of Maurice Gibb in magazines, on record sleeves, in documentaries, and each time he paused. The resemblance wasn't imagined, and Nick wasn't the only one who noticed. Friends and bandmates occasionally commented on it too. His mannerisms, facial structure, even the tone of his voice, it all seemed familiar. Still, Nick didn't act on it. He had no proof, no story, no connection. Until 2019, when curiosity led him to take a DNA test. What he didn't expect was a match. Not just to anyone, but to Adam Gibb, the known son of Maurice. And the match was conclusive, 100% paternal relation. This wasn't a distant cousin or vague link. According to science, Nick and Adam Gibb shared a father. The father was Maurice. But had Maurice ever known? That part, no one can say for sure, and that's where the mystery deepens. When the DNA results came back, Nick Endacott stared at the screen in disbelief. A 100% match to Adam Gibb, the son of Maurice Gibb, meant only one thing: they were brothers. Half-brothers by biological definition, full brothers by genetic truth. This wasn't a vague possibility or speculative result. Multiple outlets, including the Daily Mail and Smooth Radio, confirmed the match through DNA testing services used by both Nick and relatives connected to the Gibb family. It was real, and it was undeniable. Nick had long suspected he might have famous origins, but to see it confirmed that his biological father was Maurice Gibb, one of the core members of the Bee Gees, was overwhelming. The emotions were mixed: relief, confusion, grief. Because Maurice had died in 2003, 16 years before the test, Nick would never get to meet him, never ask him questions, never hear his voice in person, or play him one of his songs. He had arrived at the truth, but too late for a conversation. As for the Gibb family, here's what's confirmed. Nick has not been legally acknowledged by the Bee Gees estate. There is no known legal challenge, no addition to wills, and no public statement from the Gibb brothers, Barry or Robin, before Robin's death in 2012. Some members of Maurice's extended family have privately acknowledged the DNA match and welcomed Nick, particularly Leslie Gibb's daughter, Deborah McLean, who has since collaborated musically with Nick under the name Cousins Gibb. But others in the family? Their silence speaks volumes. And as for the public? The moment Nick's story hit the press, fans were split. Some embraced the new Gibb family member. Others questioned the timing. According to Nick, he didn't seek fame or money. He just wanted to know. And now he did. But one question still haunted him. Had Maurice known all along? Or was this a chapter even Maurice never got to read? The DNA test may have confirmed Nick's father. But what about his mother? Her name is publicly known, Anne. And according to Nick, she had carried this secret for over 50 years. Here's what's verified. Anne confirmed that she had a brief relationship with Maurice Gibb in 1967. At the time, the Bee Gees had just returned to the UK from Australia and were rising quickly in the London music scene. Maurice was 18, young, famous, and in the early stages of pop superstardom. Anne became pregnant, and according to Nick's account, confirmed in multiple interviews, Anne decided to give the child up for adoption shortly after his birth in April 1968. Nick was placed with a family in East Sussex, and Anne disappeared from his life. Decades later, in the early 2000s, Nick found her again, and what she told him changed everything. According to Nick's own interviews with outlets like The Sun and The Mirror, Anne confirmed that Maurice was the father. She claimed she had attempted to contact him once or twice, through letters or messages, but never received a response. This part, however, is not verified by any third party. There is no documented evidence that Maurice ever acknowledged the pregnancy. No letters, no legal filings, no statements from Maurice or his estate, which leads to one of the story's greatest unanswered questions. Did Maurice Gibb ever know he had another son? Nick has never claimed to know the answer. In his words, "I don't believe he did." He holds no resentment, only sadness. Because if Maurice had known, Nick believes, he would have done something. But the truth may never be fully known. Maurice passed away in January 2003 from complications related to a twisted intestine. He was 53. Whatever knowledge he carried with him died with him, and that left Nick in the hands of someone else entirely. After the DNA confirmation, Nick Endacott had a choice. He could keep the truth private, hide in the shadows of the legacy, stay silent, as so many others might have. But he didn't. Instead, he changed his name. He became Nick Endacott-Gibb, adding Gibb not as a legal maneuver, but as a personal declaration. It wasn't about fame or inheritance. According to Nick himself, the name wasn't about cashing in. It was about claiming an identity that had always belonged to him, even if no one else had recognized it. His public interviews, particularly with the Jim Masters Show, Mirror, and Smooth Radio, were calm, respectful, and deeply emotional. He never accused, he never demanded, he only asked for understanding. And for the Bee Gees fans, the response was divided. Some welcomed him instantly. The resemblance, the musical talent, the mannerisms, it all felt like proof. Others were skeptical. They wanted paperwork, legal confirmation, a statement from the family which never came. As of now, there has been no formal legal recognition of Nick by the Gibb estate, but he carries the name, not out of vanity, but out of quiet, undeniable truth. Still, not everyone accepted him. And what happened next, on stage, was his own kind of reckoning. It started as a tribute. Nick Endacott-Gibb teamed up with Deborah McLean, daughter of Leslie Gibb Evans, Maurice's sister. They called themselves Cousins Gibb, because that's exactly what they are, by confirmed family tree and DNA. Together, they re-recorded one of the Bee Gees' most iconic hits, Tragedy. But this version wasn't flashy. It was stripped down, raw, emotional, delivered with a quiet kind of power that felt more like mourning than celebration. When the song was released on YouTube and digital platforms, the reactions came fast. Some fans said it gave them chills, others called it haunting, and a few even said Maurice would have been proud. But inside the Gibb family, silence. According to public sources and interviews, neither Barry Gibb nor Yvonne Gibb, Maurice's widow, has acknowledged Nick's musical efforts publicly. There have been no public statements supporting or denying his existence from the Bee Gees estate. Still, Nick performed anyway. And in the audience, people cried. Because the voice wasn't Maurice's, but it echoed him in tone, spirit, and soul. And as Nick sang the line, Tragedy, when the feeling's gone and you can't go on, it felt personal. Like he wasn't just honoring his father, he was grieving a life they never got to share. More than 5 years have passed since the DNA test, and in all that time, one thing has remained constant: silence. Despite multiple press articles, music releases, interviews, and direct outreach, Nick Endacott-Gibb has never received a formal acknowledgement from the Gibb family, nor from the estate of Maurice. This is not speculation. It's confirmed in Nick's own words and by the absence of any public response from Barry Gibb or the Bee Gees organization. He has not sued. He has not demanded anything in court. He simply continues to tell his story. In a 2020 interview, Nick said, "All I wanted was to know where I came from. Everything else is secondary." That truth, so small, so human, seems to be the heart of it all. And yet, that silence still hurts. Because while the world sings along to love somebody, or how deep is your love, there's a man in Brighton who wonders how deep his father's love could have gone, if he'd only known. But maybe someone else knew. Maybe the silence wasn't ignorance. Maybe it was protection. That's where the questions still linger. Adam Gibb, the son Maurice raised, has never spoken publicly about Nick. He is alive, living a private life, and has kept away from the spotlight that surrounded his father and uncles. Despite the overwhelming media coverage that followed Nick Endacott-Gibb's DNA revelation, Adam has made no public statement and has never confirmed nor denied the biological connection. Yet it was his DNA, matched through a commercial ancestry site, that confirmed the paternal relationship between him and Nick. That silence speaks volumes. Nick has often expressed in interviews that he doesn't expect acknowledgement, but he does wonder what could have been if he and Adam had grown up together, if they had known each other not as strangers, but as brothers. It's one of the most emotionally complex elements of the story. Two men, linked by blood, but living in separate worlds, unknown to each other for over 50 years. And now, despite the DNA confirmation, that connection remains unspoken, hanging in the air like a final unfinished note in a Bee Gees harmony. Nick doesn't force the issue, he only honors it. And that, more than anything, tells you Nick Endacott-Gibb has never performed on a global stage. He doesn't tour stadiums. He doesn't own the Bee Gees catalog. He has no claim to the estate. But he does have something no one else has: the voice. It's not identical to Maurice's, but it holds the same emotional charge, the same softness, the same wounded hope. And through that voice, Nick has found peace. He says music is his connection to Maurice, to Adam, to the family that doesn't speak to him. And in every chord, there's a question. In every lyric, a message never sent. Maybe Maurice didn't know. Maybe the industry buried it. Maybe fate intervened. Or maybe the timing was never right. Nick has never forced the issue. He has never demanded headlines. His interviews are quiet, respectful, and open-hearted. He is, by all accounts, a Gibb in everything but paperwork. And maybe that's enough, because some legacies aren't written in courtrooms or wills. They're written in harmony. Nick Endacott-Gibb may never get the apology or the embrace he deserves, but his story matters. And if it moved you, if it left you thinking, then subscribe to RetroWaves, where the echoes of music's past still carry secrets the world needs to hear. Who else is hiding in the shadows of music history? You'll find out right here. Subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us, do you think Maurice Gibb knew? Because one day, someone just might answer.